morning, good evening. Don't say good night yet. We got a banger today. We're talking about tax. I'm going to say we're not talking about practice. We're talking about tax today. Allen Iverson reference for you. Don't know. Very good one. Look it up on YouTube. Not right now, though. Pay attention to this part. It's going to get interesting. We're talking about taxes today. I know that sounds dry and boring, but they're actually professional people that save you a lot of money and a lot of trouble through a lot of things by knowing this area very well. And they're not boring, and they're very exciting because they have very good information for us, don't they? So Anthony from Fusion Partners, professional tax consultancy in the UK. We will be going through a lot of different stuff with HEX, PulseChain, PulseX, as far as tax implications. How are taxes treated in the UK? Again, I know there's probably a lot of Americans watching this and people around the world, but he is a tax consultant for Britain, not the US, not anywhere else. There may be some overlap, maybe some correlation, but this would only be tax advice from him for that particular jurisdiction. Just keep that in mind. So I'm very excited. I know the tweet got a lot of engagement today. So it seems like we're going to have a crowd. So that's good. Looks like Bitfinesse is taking the rest of the day off for this. Well, I hope we make it good for you. No pressure on anyone that's actually talking today, especially not Anthony, but there are people interested in their financial future, which is great. Yeah, Bitfinesse, appreciate you joining us. Yeah, we definitely need to get better at taxes. I think everyone, unless you're a tax professional, you have more to learn, right? SJ, appreciate it. Always good to see you. Awesome. Bitfinesse, Godfather's here. Awesome. Jerry Oaksmith, Iris only knows what you tell him. That's true. That's why we don't talk about this stuff very often. And yeah, I have a general rule of not talking about my finances in general, other than my family and my tax advisor. So I think that's I don't think you can go wrong with that advice a lot of times. Rags of Riches is here. Appreciate it, man. I heard there was a shout out on a stream the other day. I haven't looked at it. I saw a reference. I'm gonna have to. Crazy busy morning today. I haven't had a chance to look at it. I certainly will. Appreciate his support. All the nice words and all the support from everyone. Spent a lot of time doing this stuff. I've been grinding. I have been going deep. I'm going to take a little bit of time off, but I've got plenty of videos scheduled, and to keep the content coming, that's what I try to do. Very proactive in that way. Yes, sir. I will certainly do it, and I hope we can get you on the show sometime as well if you're interested. Certainly love to talk turkey with you and many other folks in the community as well. Yes. Appreciate everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thanks for your time, support, energy. We're going to make this a banger, like I said a few minutes ago. Without further ado, welcome to the stream, Anthony.
Hi guys, how are you doing?
You're getting this warm. I feel the warm welcome. The vibe is very good. It's very positive. It's got a lot of good energy. It's very
Don't worry, I'll get rid of all that before we have to worry about it. Before it gets too exciting.
Yes.
Thanks for having me, and apologies to all the US viewers. This is, as you say, going to be mainly UK based, but I think there's hopefully going to be some thoughts that might be relevant across the ocean as well.
For sure. That's what I think. Everyone here, I imagine there's definitely some British fans. I think that's good to get. I know we have a lot of British Mexicans, and so I think it's great. I want nothing else. I want to get some content out for them to help them and things like that. I know you're very active on Telegram, talking to people and trying to get, and I know some Mexicans, maybe your clients and things like that. So it seems like you're doing great work, and that's why we want to get you on the show to kind of talk around some of these issues that are there's so much. Taxes is one of the things that there's just so much information out there and so much speculation, and mostly it's people who are not professionals bouncing ideas off each other, which is fine, but you need, at the end of the day, you need someone to kind of confirm, give you the perspective from that the government would look at it in that way. So that's why we're glad.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, there's a lot of misinformation, and a lot of people come into the crypto space with, they don't think of this as real money in a lot of cases, and all of a sudden it's worth a lot of money, and something which once upon a time they didn't really think was ever going to be relevant from a tax point of view suddenly becomes very relevant. But I think there's also the kind of the misunderstanding with a lot of people in the crypto space that it's not visible. And I saw the comment earlier, the IRS only knows what you tell them. But in the UK, there's a lot going on, which is changing that. In the EU, the UK actually just opted out. I know we're jumping into things a bit, but the EU has just put in place a requirement where if you are sending funds from a exchange to a non-custodial wallet, so you're sending funds from your Coinbase or your crypto.com into a MetaMask, they want you to provide details of the person you're sending it to. And that's passed in Europe. The UK's actually opted out of it, but the US, and if you guys kind of are aware of kind of the US and how it deals with tax and reporting, they started the international information exchange through something called FATCA, and FATCA is a big issue internationally, and the US don't like not knowing about financial stuff. So it is something. I tell all of my clients in the UK, if you're in a situation where you think that the government aren't going to find out what you're up to, at some point down the line, you're going to need to get money out of your wallet. And to do that, you're going to have to go through probably a mainstream exchange, and that mainstream exchange will have done deals with HMRC in the background. I've had a number of my clients who have had letters through from major exchanges saying, we've been informed. We have informed HMRC that we must provide information of all people who provide or have crypto transactions beyond any level, and they know. The government are not stupid in any of these countries. They know people are shifting huge amounts of money, and they know that people are not going to be reporting properly. So, kind of sticking your head in the sand. Or potentially even worse, kind of using privacy coins to mask what you're doing, puts you in a dangerous position.
Very interesting. Yeah, I think in the U.S., I think it's very much the honor system, which works a lot. Provides the flexibility. The foundations of the country was this optimization towards liberty. As a libertarian, I know this a lot better than your common American as well. Just that it feels so good to be able to do this stuff and have this freedom, but at the same time, getting your taxes right. Everyone says get your taxes right. You don't want to get into trouble with these things. You want to do to the best of your ability, and if you don't feel like you have a good ability, look for a tax advisor to help you out. So certainly knowing about these regulations, especially around Europe and the UK. I wonder how. Before we get into it, I do have a question to ask on DEXs and how that may play a role as well. But could you just, before we get too deep, maybe introduce yourself just a bit, just so people have an idea of where you come from, how you got into what your business is about, how you found Richard Heart and crypto and all that stuff.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Anthony Rogers. I'm the managing partner of Fusion Partners. We're a boutique tax consultancy in the UK, and we generally provide specialist tax advice to accountants, financial advisors, lawyers, and direct clients. And the majority of my crypto clients are direct clients. I set up the firm 8-9 years ago now. Where are we? Yeah, 8 years ago. But prior to that, I studied law. I came out of law school and specialized in pure tax. Worked for a few accountancy firms, worked for a couple of tax planning firms, and in 2014, set up my own practice. I basically run it with my wife. My wife's a qualified lawyer, a chartered company secretary, and a very, very smart cookie, who now spends most of her time looking after our little boy. But she's always there in the background, making sure that the business runs smoothly. But in terms of crypto, I basically missed an opportunity. Back in the very, very early days, I had a very geeky friend of mine who was a project manager in an IT company, and I was around his house one day, and he said, "Oh, Anthony, you've got to come and see this thing. I'm making money on my computer." And I was like, "You what?" And he said, "Yeah, I run this program in the background on my computer, and it creates bitcoins." And I'm like, "What are they?" He's like, "Oh, it's this virtual currency. It's going to be the biggest thing ever." And I was like, "Nah, that's rubbish." And this would have been 2012, 2012, 2013, and he literally just, it was back in the days of CPU mining, so it would have been really early stages, and I laughed it off at that point in time, and didn't think about it again until 2017, when a client contacted me and said, I've made some money on some crypto. Would you be able to give some tax advice? And I was the person that a lot of accountants came to when they had something they didn't know how to deal with. So I sat down with this client, had a little chat with him, and realized that with a very, very small investment in Bitcoin and Ethereum, he had made a ton of money. And this was kind of mid 2017, and that suddenly got me excited, and I sort of looked into it and had a play around, and I then invested a little bit, but actually I was having missed out on the mining fun. I then got into mining, and I kind of in my youth had built various computers and bits and pieces, so I built my own mining rigs. I bought a couple of kind of second-hand ASICs that I pretty soon learned that they became obsolete before I made any money off them. But I built a load of sort of mining rigs with NVIDIA 1060s, 1070s, a load of RTX. What did I have? 570s and 580s, and initially put them in my spare bedroom, and it soon realized that my spare bedroom became kind of like hotter than the center of the sun. So they all moved out to the garage, and I actually raised some money from one of my clients, and we did a kind of a joint venture and bought a load more, and kind of left that going until everything horribly crashed in 2018. But the reason I got into HEX in the first place was actually because I'd bought a mining rig from China, this thing called a Panda miner, which was basically a massive great metal box with 8 graphics cards in there that they'd kind of actually done a pretty good job of optimizing, and it was a bit more reliable than your bog standard wooden framed box with a load of wires and a load of graphics cards in. But one arrived, and it didn't quite work very well. So I contacted them, and they said, send it back. And I was like, oh, really? Send it back to China? This thing's like 20 kilos. But I did. I boxed it back up again. I sent it off to China. And then I forgot about it. And what they'd done is they'd said to me, well, look, we'll just stick it on one of our mining rigs, or on one of our mining setups. And they had, I assume, a warehouse full of these things just kind of ticking away on hosted for clients. And then 2018 happened, and the market crashed horribly, and my crypto was then worth nothing, and all my clients' crypto was worth nothing. And it got to the point where it wasn't cost effective to carry on mining, so all my mining machines got turned off. And I kind of just forgot about it. And little to my knowledge, these Chinese guys had continued running it. And I had it linked into a wallet. And a year and a half down the line, I kind of opened up one of my wallets, and I was like, oh, that looks a lot more than I expected. And it turned out I had not a huge amount, but I had sort of 5 or 6 grand's worth of Ethereum in there. And I was like, oh, well, I'll do something with this. And I basically just kind of, I happened to be looking at an article in a pretty mainstream newspaper that kind of had a list of top 10 performing cryptos in the last 12 months or whatever. And HEX was on the top of that list.
Was that The Economist?
Might have been.
I was just saying, I'm trying to think of the bigger newspapers I've seen HEX featured. I know there was an ad in The Economist, but I would be very interested if you ever remember about it, that would be good to share with the community for sure.
And I just kind of had a look at a few of them. I looked into sort of HEX, and I did a bit of research on it, and I thought this performs a function more than just another blockchain that's going to be kind of a little bit useless after a while. And I thought, okay, well, I'll give it a punt. And it was kind of in my head, it was like, this is a bit of free money. I'll just throw it at a random project, and it really was kind of. And at that point, I had no idea who Richard Heart was. I hadn't dug into it any deeper than that, and I threw some money at it. I did what I needed to do, and then kind of staked all of it, I did a couple of short stakes, and then decided to sort of stake most of it for a year and a couple of years and 5 years. And it was only after that, when I put that in there, that I kind of joined the Telegram group, and then I found out about Richard and found out a lot more about the systems and what he did, and that kind of led me into HEX in a very sort of unusual way, because most people they find out that somebody tells them about Richard and they see Richard and then that leads them to HEX. But I started with HEX and that led me to Richard.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, and thank you for whoever did that marketing. I mean, clearly, it worked to onboard some folks such as yourself. I'm sure you're not the only one. That's an interesting case study, actually. I'd like to dig into that if you're comfortable with it. Could you tell us, can you walk us through the tax implications for that situation? You made the Ethereum that was in China. You converted that to HEX. It sounds like you made some stakes. Can you just walk us through, if you don't mind talking about it, the intricacies of the tax implications for all those steps?
Yeah, sure. So one thing for the UK, we up until February this year, we actually had minimal guidance from HMRC, and it was only we only kind of had some outline guidance. And when I was originally advising clients, so this would have been 2018 when their taxes became due, there was nothing. There was literally no guidance from HMRC on crypto tax at all. And I gave my advice to the clients, and it turned out HMRC published guidance about a year down the line, and it tied in with what I told them. So I was really quite happy at that point in time. But from a UK point of view, things have chopped and changed quite a bit, and there's still quite a bit of uncertainty in terms of how HMRC want to treat things. But in practice, what you've got capital events, and most of the transactions with any crypto are going to be capital. They're going to be buys and sells. But with the advent of DeFi, that introduced mining. Mining was always there. DeFi introduced staking, and it introduced kind of weird and wonderful different projects, which made things a bit wider. In the olden days, it was you had mining, and mining is an income. So you mine crypto and you technically earn it as it is provided to you. Now, obviously, you should value it at the value you receive it, and if you're receiving it every few seconds, then it's practically not possible to value it each and every few seconds every time you finish a block. But from a practical point of view, you've got a rough idea if you look at it on a monthly basis, and that's simple income. It's subject to income tax. It's miscellaneous income from a UK point of view. And one of the nice things about miscellaneous income is if you're doing a little bit of it, there's £1,000 allowance. But actually, if you're working on it on a bigger scale, like I was, it can actually become a trade. So what you then have is if you're starting up a trade of crypto mining, you have got to buy all the equipment, and the equipment you get allowances for your capital expenditure, and you can offset that against your income. So I had a period where for the first sort of couple of years we were just kind of covering our costs, and then obviously over time it kind of built up. But it can either be trading income if you're doing it kind of a bit more professionally, or if you're kind of just randomly mining on your graphics card at home, it's probably going to be miscellaneous income. It does mean you're going to pay tax on it if it's more than that £1,000 limit. So for somebody who's working, it might be they're going to pay 20% tax on it. It might be they'll pay 40% tax on it. For the highest rate in the UK is 45%. But what you then do is you attribute whatever value you attributed to it when you treat it as income tax. That's your base cost for capital gains tax thereafter. So kind of
Well, I just want to say in this scenario, what if someone else was mining for you, right? That was happening, but then you were the recipient of it in your wallet, right?
Yeah. So it depends on why you received it. So is somebody mining on your behalf? In which case, that you've either got a gift, or if and I'm just trying to think of a sensible way of setting this up. If for argument's sake, I gave you my computer to set up, and you set up the computer, and the computer sat in your living room, but effectively it's my asset that's generating the income for me, then it's mine. So it is a question. If I was mining it and then giving it to you, that's a gift. And that's a disposal for CGT purposes, so you'd have to be aware of that. But if you're kind of giving it on an ongoing basis, the miner pays their tax on it, and if they're giving it relatively quickly afterwards, then there's unlikely to be much of a gain, because the value shouldn't shift significantly in that period.
Is there a difference between signing up for cloud mining and what happened in your situation where you weren't really aware, but then it ended up happening? Is there a distinction?
Not really. At the end of the day, I mean, back in the day, I mean, when you used to buy kind of mining contracts, I don't know whether these are still a thing. But effectively, what you've got is a capital outlay on the upfront part of it. You've then got trading income. So your argument in that situation is, will your capital outlay cover the income cost? But it is in theory, what you've got is, unless, let's think about this in practice, with a mining contract, you're buying a right to use it, so that's effectively a lease of the machine for a period of time, so that would be deductible against your income. So yeah, I mean, you're going to have to look at the specifics of the transaction, but I would imagine in most cases what you're doing is you're leasing out that equipment for a period of time. So let's say you spend $1,000 on a mining contract, you've leased that hash rate for that period of time. If you then make $1,500 from that mining contract, you've got a $500 profit, but that's going to be income because it's a mining income. Okay,
and then the conversion between Ethereum and HEX.
So that's a straightforward CGT disposal, so capital gains tax. So what you would look at in that situation is, what was your acquisition cost of your Ethereum? So in my case, it was the value of the Ethereum as I earned it, the amount that I declared for income tax purposes. So, and that's in most of these cases, what I say to clients is, anybody who's doing anything more than just buying and selling a bit of simple crypto, you need some software to deal with these things. So you need a piece of software that will recognize and record what the price of your Ethereum or whatever you're mining was at the point in time when you receive it. So for example, at the moment, I've got some DOT staked, I've got some Ethereum 2 staked, got some other bits and pieces staked outside of the kind of HEX ecosystem. But because that feeds directly into my software, and I think software is probably something we can talk a bit about later, at the point at which it lands in my wallet, the software picks up the value of it and attributes that to it. So if I were to then sell it, I've got a base cost attributed to it. Now, doing that manually is a tough process over a period of time, unless you're really focused and you're sitting there, on a daily basis doing the numbers, and nobody wants to be doing that. Buy some software. It's a lot easier. It's a lot cheaper.
A lot of work,
yeah. But yeah, so effectively you've got a base cost for your Ethereum, you have disposed of that, and you've got probably a gain on your Ethereum, potentially a loss, who knows what.
Okay. And then HEX staking. So HEX staking in the UK, let's go through that part.
Yeah, so HEX staking. So when I first started advising people on HEX, we treated it as ordinary staking. So basically we said, staking is an income source. We're going to treat that as income tax, and consequently we will just tax people at their marginal income rate on whatever HEX stakes they receive. However, in February they released some new guidance, and actually I'd been talking to a couple of people in the HEX world about the actual mechanisms of how the HEX contract works. And the HMRC guidance basically looks at the concepts when you stake coins, and they were really looking at the mainstream kind of centralized exchanges. They were looking at the likes of BlockFi and Celsius. Sorry, if anybody who's hurt by that word. They were looking at the big centralized exchanges as their kind of primary source. And what they basically said was, if you have a situation where you deposit your funds at BlockFi, for argument's sake, or Nexo, or wherever it may be, and they can do something with your tokens, you've disposed of them. So, the likes of Nexo and BlockFi, they make their money by taking your, you stake your Ethereum. They make their money by taking your Ethereum and sticking it somewhere else they can get a better yield. When it might be lending it out internally, it might be kind of sticking it into other projects, but they take control of your assets.
Just a quick question. So dispose, is that the same as abandonment? Is that,
sell? Let's say sell.
Sell. Okay.
So dispose in UK tax, dispose is a sort of a general term that covers everything from losing, gifting, selling, and they within UK tax they all have the same effect. So if I've got some HEX that's worth $1,000 now that I bought for $100, and I lose it, I'm treated as having a gain of $900. If I give it to you, I'm treated as having a gain of $900. If I sell it to you, I'm treated as having a gain of $900. There are reliefs in certain situations. So if it's lost, then there are certain reliefs that can give you CGT reliefs. If
it's lost, could you claim it as a loss? Sorry, I'm using like the I guess the US tax words and stuff, kind of intermingling. And correct me on the UK terms though, but that's the kind of relief you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. So if it's lost, and you have a loss. However, weirdly enough, HMRC, if it's stolen, HMRC take the view that if your crypto is stolen, you still have you have the legal ownership of it. You have the primary legal right over that. So it's not a disposal. So if somebody comes in and hacks and steals all your funds, you haven't disposed of it. So there's no CGT event, which means you can't have a loss on it, but you haven't triggered any gains.
You triggered me on that one.
Don't worry, it triggers a lot of people.
I mean, when you lose crypto, it's not like, if you lose your car, you may be able to recover your car. You lose your crypto, that's a different process that usually doesn't happen.
And I've not had to put in a claim for theft on crypto yet, but we have something called a negligible value claim, where you can put in a claim where something has gone to nothing. So for argument's sake, let's say you invest in some random shitcoin and you put $1,000 into a shitcoin, and it turns out to be a rug pull, and there's no liquidity left, and you're left holding this bag of shitcoins that you can't sell because there's no liquidity, there's no way of actually getting rid of the bloody things, because you can't sell it, you can't crystallize that loss. So
you could send it to the PulseChain and PulseX sacrifices and hope Richard has mercy on you. I think that's the only thing I can see on that one.
Yeah, but what you can do is you can make this thing called a negligible value claim that basically says that if something has become of negligible value, we'll pretend you sold it. And because it's worth nothing, you've sold it for nothing. So your base cost was 1,000. It's now you've sold it for nothing, and you get 1,000 loss to offset against your other gains. So there are ways around it. But sorry, we've kind of get distracted by the word disposal, haven't we? So where we were talking about, so if you put it into a centralized exchange, that's a disposal. And that was a big issue for a lot of crypto investors, because if you are in a position where you've made some good money on your Bitcoin or your Ethereum or whatever it may be, and you want to stick it into a boring sort of centralized exchange and get a little 4% yield or whatever it may be, or whatever they're offering, 10-12% sometimes, to be told then that that's a taxable event and all of those gains that you've built up to date are now triggered, was a significant shock for a lot of people. And I had a lot of sympathy for those people. But then when you sit down and you think about the legality of it, you have given those coins away. You are no longer in control of those coins. And I think taking it to court.
Which situation are you talking about?
On a centralized exchange. So let's say you've got BlockFi, you've put your tokens into BlockFi, and BlockFi have now loaned them out to somebody else, because that's what they do. You have lost control of those tokens, and HMRC's view is that you have now you've sold them, and what you've actually got is a right to receive some of those tokens back in the future. And it is, it's a bit of a scary thought for a lot of clients who thought they were just sort of stashing things away for a rainy day.
Does it even make sense to do it then? Like, how can you even win doing that?
Well, I mean, the
Is it
advantage
regulated
of,
out?
Yeah, and a lot of people took the view that they put it in there, and they would borrow against it, and they'd use that as collateral forevermore, and borrow some USDC or USDT or whatever it may be that they cash out, and that's their spending money. But suddenly, the fact that they've actually crystallized again, I've just seen the comments. Comments
are getting spicy. We're only halfway through. Don't worry.
I told you, tax is it's a divisive subject. But I'm coming back to the point. The reason why that's relevant is because actually you then look at the HEX contract, and what happens when you stake HEX? Well, the HEX no longer exists. It gets burnt by the contract, and you are effectively given T-shares, whatever T-shares are. They're a right to receive a future amount of HEX depending on your conduct during the period you're staked.
Mm-hmm.
So you have disposed of your HEX at that point for some T-shares. But what that also means is on the other side, your earnings, your income from your HEX is not income. What it is you've acquired your T-shares, and at the point where you end your stake, and you now transfer your T-shares into newly minted HEX, you've sold your T-shares and you've gained your HEX, and you've got a capital disposal. Now, where that becomes interesting is that if you have a big long stake, which is now 5 years down the line or whatever it may be, or if you're one of the very early people where your interest is significantly larger than your principal. If you were in early and you've now got a stake that ended and has got £100,000 or $100,000, whatever it may be, of interest, then normally that would be taxable at income tax rates, probably 40-45%. Now, because it's a capital event, it's taxable at 20%. So it's halved your tax bill.
And that doesn't matter because I'm thinking short term, long term. Just the fact that the stake ends and you're trading the shares in for the interest and the principal that was originally put in. That's taxed at a lower tax bracket, the 20%. So what you said?
Yep.
Very interesting. Okay, well, it's kind of like you're getting hit with a big club and they gave you a Band-Aid, I guess, but it's not as bad as it sounds at first.
Yeah, exactly. And there is this balance where, in the right circumstances, if you are kind of having a regular period of kind of staking and ending and restaking and ending, what you tend to get is kind of an averaging out of your tax exposure. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're in a situation where actually there's no disposal and all you've got is a bit of income and a bit of income and a bit of income, and at the end of the day you then sell your principal, you've got a huge gain. So, to some extent, certainly at the lower levels, if you can use tax allowances and things, the process of crystallizing a bit of your gain each time a stake ends and restarts is not quite as bad as it could be. It kind of smooths the curve as you go along. But there are a lot of people who are still not very happy with the concept of crystallizing CGT when you start a stake. Because you could quite easily have a situation, particularly if you've been liquid for a while, where you've held that HEX, it's hopefully gone up in value. You've then staked and locked up your capital for a significant period of time and triggered a tax bill at the same time. So that can be a nasty situation. But it's about knowing the tax consequences of transactions before you have them, particularly if you're talking about big numbers.
Yeah, and how about if folks are doing ladder stakes? You have stakes ending every quarter, every 6 months, every year for 2, 3, 5 years out. What are the intricacies around that?
It's the same. There are individual stakes with HEX and T-shares, and each one of them will trigger a gain depending on the growth in value of your crypto in the meantime, or loss as it may be.
And maybe I wasn't clear on is there such thing as short term, long term? Before a year,
no.
after.
So in the UK, for capital gains tax purposes, Doesn't matter how long you've held it for. And you don't worry, you can talk about US concepts. I do a reasonable amount of international tax.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around like the different words and the different styles.
So
too.
We don't have a concept of long-term and short-term gains. We used to have reliefs that said that if you'd held an asset, sort of a non-business asset for more than 3 years, your tax rate reduced proportionally. So over time, the actual tax rate, if you held something for 3 years, you'd pay more tax than if you held it for 5 years, and you'd pay a higher rate of tax than if you held it for 8 years. That was all wiped out quite some time ago, and we now have a flat rate of 10% on the first £50,000 of income and gains. So if you have no income at all, your first £50,000 worth of gains are at 10%. We also have a £12,500 tax allowance. If you earn £30,000, you effectively have your first 20 at 10% and everything else at the higher rate. And the higher rate is 20%, which in the grand scheme of things, actually internationally is pretty good. And every year us tax advisors are concerned that they are going to look to kind of equalize capital rates and income rates, but it's not happened yet. But the UK is much like most other countries. We're a bit low on money at the moment.
Yeah, I bet. Very interesting. I just wanted to, I know the chat's going to go nuts, but I'm talking to them for a second. So take a quick break here. Just say hi. Sloth is here. Crypto Grammy's been killing on the questions. I got a couple on queue I want to get through too before we move on. Yep. Bit Finesse, Jerry, appreciate it. Steve's here. Yeah, everyone just being, I know this is tax stuff. You get a little nervous. It is UK only. I want to make sure maybe some of you dropped in, you thought it was US. It is not US tax advice. I'm just asking some of the different questions around, like, so I understand the difference between the two, but this is not US tax advice, only UK, not China, not Mongolia, not Singapore, not Europe. This is UK only. He is a tax advisor from there. First question, are you interviewing a US tax advisor? Let's get it out of the way. Yes, I certainly hope so. Please message them, tell them to come on the show. I've been trying to find them. Of course, I mean, I'd have anyone on here to talk about taxes in any country that's, that I have, that have HEX in it, because I think that's valuable. And it's interesting just to talk about the differences too. We'll definitely have a US expert on here whenever they want to get on the show. I haven't found many that been able to get in contact with. So if you know some, please let me know, let them know, connect us, make those connections. As Richard says, you do the work, I'll do the work too, but like, help me do the work, please. I'm going to scroll up for a sec because I didn't want to interrupt too, but we had a couple questions. So the first question, Bitfinesse asked a while back. So a trust fund that runs a C Corp that runs an LLC upside down for risk. Is there any corollary to the UK on this one? If not,
I know what you're saying, and I'm not going to comment on US positions and how you should structure your affairs if you're abroad. The weird thing is, from a UK point of view, actually running your crypto through your company is not a great idea, because as I said, most of your capital gains are going to be taxed at 20%. In the UK, we're in the process of increasing our corporate tax rates to 25%, which means if you're in a situation where you're going to pay 25% in the company versus 20% personally, there's no point doing it. And I've actually had to restructure a few clients out of their companies where their accountants or old advisors have said to them, look, stick it all in the company, you'll only pay 20%. You've got to get the money out of the company afterwards. But yeah, so.
That brings up a good question too that may be interesting here. What is the best way? Is there a way in the UK to structure, through a company or other entity to have the best tax advantages for crypto?
So generally, and this is a very loose term, generally most crypto is going to be better held personally, unless you're in a situation where you have got significant income. And then you look at HEX, and I think there's a strong argument that HEX shouldn't be income anyway. So if you were mining heavily, if you were staking and you had massive amounts that you were staking, in those situations you might be better off having the income in a company. But for most people, the major money and the major profits they make are from capital growth. What I have been doing recently is developing a UK-based pension scheme which can hold crypto, and all of a sudden, when you got your crypto in a pension, it's exempt from income tax, it's exempt from capital gains tax, it's exempt from inheritance tax, and it suddenly becomes a very interesting structure. And I've got a trustee I'm working with that we're putting together a pension scheme which will hopefully allow people to hold up to £1 million in crypto completely tax-free. But beyond that,
Wow.
I have a lot of clients who talk about, do we put it in a trust? Do we stick it in a company? And actually, the answer at the moment is no. Keep it simple. The lowest tax rate you're going to get in the UK is 20%, and that's holding it personally. The other side of it, and I do have quite a few clients who are having this conversation, is what if I don't want to pay my 20%? The answer is leave the country. And it is, it's one of those things where if you've made significant money in crypto and you've got significant gains, there are a lot of countries that don't tax crypto gains at all. Portugal at the moment, they might be changing the rules over there. Portugal doesn't tax crypto gains. Germany has a 1-year exemption, which means if you hold your crypto for more than a year and you then sell it, it's exempt. There are lots of Middle Eastern countries. There are kind of Channel Island countries. Sort of a lot of the Far East has CGT exemptions. So there are lots of places. The Caribbean's also a good place to look at. There are a lot of places you can go to and pay basically zero tax on your crypto. But the UK is not one of those.
Yeah, not yet. Hopefully it'll catch up.
Yeah, and it's then a question of whether it's your lifestyle allows you to do that.
Yeah. So just going on that a little bit. Let's say there is a scenario where you have a Hexcan who invested early. They're in the UK. They made a lot of money. They want to get some liquidity, or they want to cash out, or whatever it is they want to do. Is the best advice to move to another country? Like, what would you do with someone who's got millions of dollars for the Hex? There's plenty of people out there who have that. Like, we can see it on the blockchain.
I have quite a few clients in that situation. Sadly, a lot less millions of dollars than they had a couple of months ago.
Brutal.
I know.
Yes.
It's they made millions from this. I didn't.
Not yet.
But yeah, it's yes. The answer is if your life circumstances mean that you can move somewhere abroad and crystallize your gains, then and you can do it while still enjoying your life. And I have this conversation with a lot of my clients where they've made serious money, and it might be crypto, it might be just business, it might be they've got assets. If the first thing you should think is, do I want to go abroad? Do I want to go and spend my life living on a beach? Do I want to go spend my life living in Guernsey? Do I want to go and go somewhere quiet? Where do I want to live my life? And what's tying me to home at the moment? Have you got kids in school? Have you got elderly parents that need looking after? Have you got all your friends here? And what's the saving versus the cost?
I just want to ask too, like, how would you actually do it? Like, let's say you've been staked for a long time, you have these millions, you want to get cash. Could you literally just go to another country and live? Like, is there a time limit? You need to live there for a year. If you come back, do you need to pay retroactively or anything? Like, what's the details around that?
Yep. So yes to all of the above, but basically we have something called the statutory residence test here, which basically counts the number of days you're in the UK. To avoid your CGT on your crypto, you need to be non-resident, so you need to be out of the UK and it really does depend, somewhere between 16 and 90 days. So sorry, for you can only be in the UK for somewhere between 60 and 90 days, depending on your circumstances. 90 days is kind of the ballpark that a lot of people talk about. But I had a guy who was working full-time abroad and ended up being here for 46 days and was UK tax resident because of his circumstances. So even though he was working, he was genuinely on a full-time contract abroad, but because of the circumstances, he got caught out by some bad advice historically, and was UK resident despite only being here slightly more than that. I think it was 58 days, but it was less than 60, which is what he needed to score. But he was in a situation where, you know, if you plan things in the right way, if you know the number of days you're allowed to spend in the UK, you can arrange it quite easily. For a lot of my clients, we can get to 90 days quite easily. So you can spend 90 days in the UK and not become tax resident. The first couple of years, it might be less than that, because you might still have a home that you can stay in. You might have been here more. You might have spent more days here than other countries. But the bottom line is, you know, as long as you do your day counting and you don't spend more than you're allowed in the UK, so you go to Portugal, you go to Dubai, you go to somewhere where they don't charge tax. You then make your gain. It's not taxable in the UK if you're not resident that tax year. However, we then have this concept of temporary non-resident, which basically says that if you come back within 6 years, you are then taxed on all of the gains during that period when you arrive back in the UK. So it has to be a long-term decision. You know, it has to be one of these things where, you know, you're going to do this and it's going to be a semi-permanent decision. And you don't have to go, you know, and stay in one place. You know, you can have a year in Portugal and a year in Dubai, and you can have a year on a yacht sailing around the world if you've got the money to do it. But you need to be non-resident for that 6-year period.
So millionaire Hexicans in the UK, if you're okay and you want to cash out and you're okay with living abroad for at least 6 years in a place that is tax preferential in whatever way you find out, that's a plan. Is that right?
Yep. And a lot of tax havens are quite nice places to go and spend some money.
Yeah. It doesn't have to turn out like what's his name, McAfee, John McAfee. Hey, did you ever see? Oh shoot! Did I lose chat? Oh my god! I think I lost chat. No, did I lose chat? Oh no, that was private chat. Never mind. Chat is back. Sorry about that. Yeah, it didn't work. He was on. Did you ever see him on Richard's stream? He did one with John McAfee.
I didn't see that one. No.
It's a great one. Yeah,
might have to dig back and see that.
Rest in peace, Mr. McAfee. You were a pioneer in so many ways. Just going through the questions again real quick. Hopefully that was really interesting. I'm glad that question came up because it led us to another question, which was very, very interesting too. Let me get through. Let's see. Blue is here. Hi, Blue. How's it going? Blue comments on my videos more than anyone else, so he deserves a spotlight and a thank you and a thank you, sir. Bow for that. He keeps up the engagement. I appreciate that. To my other people, let's see. Important to emphasize there are a few actual decisions here in the US. Yep. Yes, important to emphasize that. I'm trying to, without like chopping the content as much as possible, saying this is UK advice. And I think it's going to be very, very useful for people in the UK. So I'm sorry that most of my audience are Americans.
And the same comment applies in the UK as well. You know, we have 4 cases in the UK that are relevant to crypto. There is really and none of those were specific tax cases. So it's the same everywhere in the world.
Yep. Bitfinance, if you don't spend too much money in the UK. Okay, here we go. If you don't spend too much money in the UK, I think that's 1 cent. Yeah, you want to speak to that? What does that make? Is there a point to be made there?
So I'm not sure what the 3 strikes are.
Yeah.
That's you're out. Yeah, I mean, there is a balance. You know, and I think the UK is not a bad place to live. We have a reasonable standard of living, particularly if you've got some money to spend. And 20% tax, while it's a lot more than people were expecting to pay when they first signed up for this, I think 20% tax is not that much in the grand scheme of tax. You know, if you've got $1 million profit, and that's, you know, moving abroad is going to save you £200,000, but you've got to do it for 6 years. You know, is it going to be worth it for $200,000 to move somewhere new, buy a new house, get all of the costs, and, you know, particularly if you've got a family, you know, the cost of then educating your family and looking after your family, and, you know, there is a balance. But for people in the right circumstances, for people who want to move, you know, people who have always dreamed of moving somewhere sunny or, you know, quitting the rat race or whatever it may be. It can make a very meaningful difference to your standard of living if you don't have to pay any tax on your massive gains.
For sure, definitely. I'm gonna bring this comment up real quick. Does my audio sound okay? I swear there's some. I will ask people and they'll be like, "Yes, it's perfect," and then I'll get comments sometimes saying it sounds like I'm in an echo, and I'm like, when I play these videos back, I never hear an echo chamber. I never hear an echo.
You sound fine to me, but
I'm gonna move here. How's this? Does this sound good? Test 1 2 3.
Yep.
And I'm gonna go here. Test 1 2 3.
That to me sounds better.
It sounds better being farther away. I don't know how this echo chamber happens. Like I don't want to blame your speakers or other people's audio listening devices, but I swear to God, no. I mean, I want the feedback. I want to know, but I've just heard it so many times on and I've changed microphones. I did all these things, and RHMax he's not breaking down right now. It's not happening. But I am curious. I'm curious. Like, I feel like the sound is fine. I cut all the clips. I do all the audio. I listen to it on all my devices. Sounds fine to me. So it is different. Please. Oh, thank you, Michael Crossman. Oh, I'm sorry you can't. It's too bad for you. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do.
And going back a few comments on there, Cryptogamy says Nomad Capitalist. They do some great YouTube videos, and if you made a lot of money, they are not one of the cheapest options. They do know their stuff, but they're an expensive option, but they'll sort you out if you're looking to kind of become a proper crypto nomad.
Okay, so you can recommend them then. Oh, great. Yeah, there was a guy, I can't remember the top of my head, but he was doing, I retweeted a couple times. He was doing some really good stuff. He's a U.S. tax person, and he has some really good long form, I won't say eccentric in ways, but he's, I don't know. I feel like when I talk to different tax professionals, you are supposed to tell us the nasty, right? You're supposed to tell us like the gritty, like the most conservative type of thing. And it's always, it's like this thing is stress. It's like being at an airport, right? You go to the airport, everyone's stressed. Nobody wants to, nobody's getting paid enough. It's all this environment. So I really appreciate you having this like positive outlook and really help us work through these things. And not,
you kind of in this world, you kind of have to be. And I do kind of take this view with my clients quite often that, they come to me and they say, I do their crypto tax for argument's sake. And they say, oh my God, Anthony, I've got £200,000 worth of tax to pay. This is dreadful. And I say, well, to have £200,000 worth of tax, you had to make £1 million. So you have to look at these things from the positive point of view. For any of my clients that are coming to me and moaning about a tax bill, it's because they made a lot more money than that. So, at the end of the day, you have to look at the positive side of it. And, sadly, within a functioning society, tax is a requirement. Depending, unless you've got millions of gallons of oil sat underneath your country, the tax is generally a requirement for a normal functioning society. So if you want to be part of that society, you have to contribute in one way or another.
I pushed the libertarian side of me to the side for a moment for this conversation, but definitely. I mean, that's one thing I appreciate about America and other countries too that are prosperous and try to give you tax advantages, but also that's the thing about here. I've noticed like you have to hire a professional. Like the normal person is it's probably like that everywhere. I'm just saying my experience has been there's so many ways create a business and do all these things to get all these tax breaks and not pay 25, 30, 35, 40%. In certain states, California, help you there. It could be 50% with the state tax and all this stuff. So you really need a professional to help you work through these things. Else you're just going to be, the average person paying too much, which I don't know, maybe that's how all the system works. It's only the 1% who know how to save the money. So that's why they're in the 1% and everyone else picks up the bags. I don't know. But definitely you want to pay as little tax as legally possible. I think everyone's in agreement on that. And that's what we're here to learn.
Yeah. And the other side of it is you want to sleep at night. You want to be comfortable that you've, you've either reported or you've reported correctly. Some people will not report and then panic about it. They'll decide I'm not going to report my taxes. I'm not going to pay my taxes, and then every night thereafter, will you be sitting there wondering, is a letter going to land on my doorstep one day? And the other side of it is, if you've done it yourself, are you going to be concerned that you haven't claimed the allowances you can claim? Are you going to be concerned that you haven't reported it right? Are you're better off? Most advisors like me, they're an investment, but they're an investment that generally saves you money.
They definitely can if you get the right professional, for sure. One to ask staking. So running a node versus mining. Could you just briefly go over like the differences, tax implications in the UK for that?
From a UK point of view, very little. If you're running a node, you have an initial capital investment. You've then got income being generated, and you're going to pay income tax on your income or on your rewards. The same thing applies to mining. They are functionally the same thing. One is just through a proof of stake system, and one's a proof of work system. From a tax point of view, at the moment, things might change in the future, but the view is that it is they are equivalent to each other and will be taxed in the same way.
Gotcha. I wanted to talk about PulseChain and PulseX. So the sacrifice phases in general.
Yep.
Tax implications in the UK for sacrifice phases, particularly, like I mentioned, the two great examples we have, PulseChain and PulseX.
Yep. So I'm going to say something really, really racy here and get myself into a lot of trouble with the HEX community.
Oh, it's time. It's time.
My view is that the sacrifice was, from a tax point of view, akin to an ICO. Effectively, the majority of people who sacrificed for Pulse and PulseX probably did so with expectations. Now, I do know there are a lot of people that
you know the phrase Richard says. So
yep.
I want to dig into that too, but I think it'd be interesting. But go ahead.
I do have some people who genuinely have done so with a view to supporting the project, with a view to having no expectations. But my view is the majority of people who put some money into the sacrifice did so because they thought they might get something out of it. And that will upset Richard HeartMax's. It's also from a conceptual point of view. The basic concept was directed at Americans. It was directed at your constitutional rights. Whether that's movement or speech or whatever it may be, which we don't kind of have the same concept. Obviously, we have freedom of movement, we have freedom of speech, but we don't celebrate them in the same way that the US do. We have an expectation of it being there rather than it being kind of something which I think the US, quite rightly so, has part of their constitution. It's a very visual part of the US Constitution. It's a very visual way of the way that the US kind of psyche works, in that you have these rights and you want to fight for them. I think the UK, while we all acknowledge that we should have freedom of speech and freedom of movement and freedom of whatever it may be, obviously there's the big decision today in the States with Roe v. Wade. There's huge kind of important decisions that people take different views on, but I don't think it was in the forefront of many hexagon minds when the Pulse sacrifices were made as to whether they were supporting their constitutional rights to freedom of whatever.
But does intent matter in this, or
no?
Is that
so? I mean, yes and no to some extent. So the real question, they are coming back to the original discussions. The sacrifice is a disposal. You no longer have ownership or control of your tokens. So if you sacrifice some HEX or Ethereum or whatever it may be, you no longer have it. So you have disposed of it, and that is an event for CGT. So you have a taxable event, which means
as a sale. Is that
sale? Yep, exactly. So you are deemed to have sold those at market value. Now, if you gifted them, you've still got a CGT event, and there's no reliefs for gifts apart from certain gifts into trusts or business assets or whatever it may be, but nothing that's going to apply to HEX, nothing that's going to apply to Ethereum or whatever else you've sacrificed. So you are in a situation where you effectively have two choices. You have a choice to say, right, well, I've sacrificed this, I'm going to pay my tax, and I did it to support my rights, or to kind of promote freedoms or whatever it may be. In which case, when your PulseX tokens arrived and you had no expectation of receiving them, your base cost is zero because it was a freebie. The alternative is, let's say you sacrificed $1,000 for Pulse and you get some Pulse tokens at some point in the hopefully near future.
You're poking the bear, man. You're poking the bear.
Oh yeah, don't worry. My wife poked me about these. When's this Pulse thing happening again? It's like maybe 2 weeks.
I've heard the same thing from people.
Yeah. If you mentally were buying some Pulse tokens when you sacrificed your $1,000 of HEX, I think it's perfectly reasonable that you can attribute your $1,000 as the base cost of your Pulse. And I think that's kind of the big difference is that in the UK, you've got a taxable event when you disposed of it, so you may as well get the most of the tax relief when you eventually get your Pulse and sell it or do something with it.
Interesting. I got so many sub questions for this one. I see intent. What about the donation to Sin? So if you donated to charity, what's the implications around that?
Yep. So same concept, still a disposal. However, there were a couple of different sends addresses. In the UK, we have various charity reliefs, as you'd imagine. Now, when you are disposing of assets, one of those reliefs is that there's a relief against your capital gains. Generally, unless you are donating cash, you don't get any income tax relief. So if you're making a gift of assets, whatever that may be, to charity, you don't get any income tax relief. But what you do get is you get some CGT relief on it. And there was a UK sends sacrifice address. I'm yet to speak to anyone that sacrificed to the UK sends address. But if you did and you sacrificed it to that sends address, you're not going to get any Pulse as a result of that UK sends sacrifice. So you've got a disposal of, was it 20%? 20% goes to charity. So that 20% you've lost, but your 20% will be allowable for CGT purposes. So you won't have any tax charge on your CGT or the tokens that you gave to charity. You can have a CGT charge on the 80% that eventually goes to end up with no expectations Pulse. But the 20% you donated to charity, you pay no tax on, and you have a warm, fuzzy feeling for.
Yes. Don't worry, we've only lost half the viewers so far. How do you? So
there's three people left, is there?
No, there's 19, but there was quite a bit more, and then you started poking the bear. Maybe poked.
Oh,
no, this is great. Apologies.
It's funny, any bears out there?
No, I can like not like what you're saying so much, but still find it so interesting, the different implications. That's the thing. Yep. First principles thinking. That's what I try to put everything in. Like I don't need to get emotional, even though all these like tax things I strongly like. Oh, that's not right. All this stuff. That's okay. We're having a conversation about it. Like this is the purpose. I understand these things, even though you don't like them. Yep. I want to ask, how do you adjudicate? Is that the right word? The expectation versus no expectation, because you brought that up, and I'm not. Is there a way to not have to literally not have expectations? Because it sounds like you don't believe that's you could make the case for that happening with these sacrifice phases.
So obviously, I'm just looking at it from a UK point of view. My view is that the majority of my clients sacrificed while looking at the points that they were going to be allocated. They, and I think it is very much a kind of as I say, a US kind of view in terms of that want and need to sacrifice for your various rights. In the UK, I don't think we have that same sort of concept we donate to charities that look after children or animals, or people that have got cancer or whatever it may be. I don't think we necessarily have that same kind of view in terms of trying to use financial means to support things which are kind of fundamental rights. So
okay,
in terms of expectations, people in the UK, my experience, and then as I say, there are a couple of people who have done this with a kind of a no expectations concept, but the vast majority of people who put money into that contract in the UK that I have spoken to have taken the view that they had an expectation that they were going to get something at some point down the line.
Is there a way it could be worded that would make sense in the UK to have no expectations?
Well, I think the general view is that the no expectations point is to avoid the obvious SEC concerns around securitization and securities. From a UK point of view, that's not a concern from a legal point of view. Obviously, it is a concern in the UK if the SEC do what they did with XRP. But I think XRP had a really big issue because it was listed everywhere, and all of a sudden, particularly in the US, you couldn't buy it anymore. It was no longer accessible, and that obviously had a massive impact on the XRP price. Interestingly, you can still buy XRP in the UK. You can go onto a mainstream exchange. They have it on Binance, they have it on Coinbase, they have it on all of the main UK exchanges. But obviously, because the US is such a big crypto market, it had an impact on the price. Now,
Binance. What's Binance? I haven't been able to access Binance for a long time.
Yeah, well, exactly. But with something like Pulse that is not centrally listed, if the SEC come in and decide that they want to investigate it, unless we have a massive change in the way that Pulse is adopted, and hopefully we will see it up on sort of DEXs and it will be available to sexes. Sexes, is that how you pronounce it? I'm not sure. Centralized exchanges is.
I never thought of it that way. I like it. I mean, I guess that would be less sexy because they'd be centralized, but no, I get it. I like that.
So if we are fortunate and whatever sort of gatekeeping is in place at the moment is reduced, and I think there's a lot of hope that at some point down the line, Pulse in particular will be more accessible to people by appearing on mainstream exchanges. Obviously, that will have a big impact on it. But in the short term, if there was kind of a view on it, would Pulse survive just being decentralized in the same way that HEX is? Not really accessible on any mainstream exchanges. I think it's going to impact on its general adoption, and I think Pulse to become as big as the likes of Binance Coin or Ethereum, or even sort of the ADAs and the Polkadots of this world, it's going to need to have a little bit more kind of mainstream visibility. And the only way you get that is through kind of the mainstream user-friendly interfaces that come with centralized exchanges. But that's your danger. At the moment, the impact of the SEC calling it a security is probably low. If we get to a position where it's then listed on a dozen decent exchanges, and then the SEC decide that they're going to have a go at it, that's obviously going to be a much bigger impact than if it's just on PulseX and a few bridges.
Yeah. Okay. So is there any way you could do it? Have a financial deal in some way without expectations? That's what I was just thinking about. Like, is there any way that Richard could have worded it where, like, okay, actually, that you can make a case for that in the UK. That'd be all right. People do that,
I mean, it's a promise, isn't it? I think kind of the fact that there was visibility of the points that you're going to be awarded, the fact that there was a visibility of a bonding curve and a reduction in your entitlement depending on when you made your investment, the fact that there was specific calculations you could do when you were taking your view on how much you were going to invest. I think all of those things lead people to have expectations. If you say, I'm going to, if you sacrifice some money to this address, I might give you some tokens. No idea how many you're going to get. No idea what the ratio is. No idea whether it's first person gets most or last person gets most. If there's no correlation to when and how much you put in with what you get out of it at the end of the day, if you get anything at all, I think that then gives you a bit more protection in terms of expectations. But I think when you list a specific formula that says if you sacrifice X, you're going to get Y, and people were doing those calculations, and there were websites out there that said if you plug in your numbers and this will tell you what you're going to get out in terms of points. And I know it was points as opposed to specific Pulse tokens, but I think pretty early in the process it was made apparent that points means Pulse.
I just want to say I think that's an interesting point too, because Richard, you said other people made those sites. What if you have this? We have this situation where no expectations, and you have a rough idea. Maybe that was deliberate to not put too much information, not have all those features. Hey, what if you have that? But then all these people in the community, they start putting out these things. Is that separate? Does that make it better? Or, in that case, no expectations, that other people just kind of pick up that work and do
it? It's difficult. It's difficult to say. Because it was kind of on the main websites, it did give you details of the bonding curve. It gave you details of the calculation in terms of the points you get. But I think if you look at it from the other side and you say, well, there's no transparency in terms of what people are going to get, if they're going to get anything, will they get any sacrifices? And yes, I appreciate there's a lot of people who are very positive about Richard Heart. A lot of people who are very fanatical about Richard Heart and would probably support any project that he looks to launch. But
I'll say me.
But I think there would be an awful lot of people, particularly in the kind of the larger sort of in more kind of professional institutional people who had made money from this, who, and I don't mean that sort of disparagingly to anybody who's in the crypto space, but there are lots of people who are not necessarily Richard Heart Maxis that have got a lot of money in HEX. They put their money into the sacrifices because they probably had expectations.
Yeah, interesting.
That's why you get a lot of people who are very angry on Twitter about the fact that Pulse hasn't launched.
Yeah, that seems to defeat it a little bit. Well, just want to say there are no expectations of profit from the work of others. That's what we believe, and that's what we hope stays true, which will be better for all of us and adoption of the project and stuff. That's what we hope, at least, and that's the way. I think we got a shot. We got a shot. One more thing on this, I wanted to ask: liquid loans, for example, crypto loans with PulseChain. What are your tax thoughts on those?
Yep. So, kind of coming back to the conversation we were having earlier, I mentioned kind of the concept of the centralized protocols. So, like BlockFi and Nexo and the rest of them. Now, when you place your crypto in those, you lose control of your crypto. Now, my understanding with the likes of liquid loans is that liquid loans has no ability to do anything with your staked Pulse. So, and obviously until it launches, it's difficult to give any definitive answers because nobody knows what it's really going to do. It's not even on testnet, is it? So nobody's even able to have a play with it. But the concept, as I understand it, is that you will retain control of your coins. It will be in a contract. There will be no third party who can interact with the Pulse tokens you've deposited, and as such, it shouldn't be a disposal. And I say shouldn't, kind of a loose term because I don't know the answer at this point. But that's my general view. If it comes out and does what I've been told, and I have had conversations with the team there, because obviously people have asked me a lot of questions about it. It should not be a disposal. On the other hand, when you draw out your loan against it, that shouldn't be a disposal either. It shouldn't be a taxable event when you draw against your staked Pulse. Where it does become messy, obviously, if you then, you've got your USDL, you've sold your USDL, and you've bought something else, that's a disposal for CGT purposes, but it's only going to be on the exchange difference between the dollar and the pound. So minimal tax sponsors are going to do that point. And then obviously once you've got out of there, you're subject to normal tax. I think a lot of people are going to use it to draw down their USDL, cash that out, and go and buy themselves Lambos or whatever it is they decide they need that day.
I'm telling you, literally, we got 5 more people watching now after you said that sentence. You brought some good news.
Yeah.
Well, no, not Lambo. I was saying, I mean, yeah, Lambos too. But like just the good news of liquid loans in the UK. Is there any reason not to use it? Like, is that a legit way to,
I'm gonna lose all your viewers again now.
God,
what you've just got to be really careful about is liquidation. Because while the process of putting your coins in there in the first place is not a CGT event, if you get liquidated, you lose your tokens, and you are deemed to have disposed of them at market value. Now that's fine if you've got your USDL sat in your bank account somewhere, or you've got your house that you bought with it or whatever, and Pulse has gone down and you've got liquidated and it's gone. You've got a CGT bill there potentially. Now that's going to depend on how much you put into it in the first place. It is that question of whether anybody would ever notice that you've been liquidated in there, and if you're doing it properly and you tell your accountant about it, and you have been liquidated, and your accountant is aware that you've been liquidated, they have a legal duty to report it. Sadly, so disconnect your Don't. This isn't financial advice, but if you were to disconnect your Ethereum wallet from whatever tracking software you use just after you get liquidated and just never tell your accountant about it ever again, then you might not go to jail. But,
I like the bow you put on at the end.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
So liquidation could
liquidation. So let's just, if we do an example, let's say for argument's sake, you sacrificed $100,000 and you got $100,000 worth of Pulse, and you've now dropped that into the that's less of an issue. So let's say for argument's sake I'm trying to think how this would sting you too badly. Okay, I know what the issue is. So you've got your $1,000 worth of Pulse, for argument's sake, that's got a $1,000 base cost. It has now gone up to $1 million, and you've drawn out $500,000 in PUSD or USDL, and you've gone and you've spent your $500,000, and you've got nothing left over, and Pulse then drops 99%, basically down to nothing. You get liquidated. At the point where you get liquidated, which is on a $500,000 loan, is going to be, let's say it's $500,000. It's not, it's whatever that percentage is over the top. But let's say at the point where you get liquidated, it's $500,000. You bought your Pulse for $1,000. It's worth $500,000 when it gets liquidated. You have technically got a gain of $499,000. Because at the point where you get liquidated and you lose your tokens, that's your disposal, they're worth $500,000. So you've then got a tax bill on a gain of $499,000.
So is the best way for the best financial way to make that better is to hope Pulse doesn't go down 99%? Did I misunderstand that?
Well, the sensible thing to do is to make sure that you're in a position where you have not over leveraged yourself. Red Squirrel, I know, has got lots of strategies for Pulse and staking. Got some interesting spreadsheets, and so a lot of very big pictures with lots of arrows pointing in all sorts of directions. I'm sure he's got lots of things to share with us at some point down the line anyway. But yeah, the thing I would air caution with is just do not over borrow, do not over collateralize, or under collateralize yourself. Don't borrow to a point where if you do get liquidated, you're in deep trouble. Don't spend all your money. You borrow, but make sure that if you do borrow, you're going to put that to one side. For argument's sake, if you borrowed $500,000 on your Pulse, make sure you've got enough that if it does start to drop, you can put some back in the pot. Make sure you've got enough to kind of stop that margin call from liquidating your funds.
Well, I think a lot of people's strategy, again, probably not in the UK now, perhaps, would be to borrow, get liquidated, whatever. You got the money, you lose the Pulse, but it may be advantageous in all these ways, and do it that way. But you're saying in the UK at least that
you don't want to get liquidated in the UK. No, definitely not. And the other thing that I think we were going to talk about is kind of just being aware of issues around pricing going up and down as well. Because at the moment, and this is a perfect example, and it's the same thing that happened in 2008, is just keeping that money to one side, keeping some dry powder or whatever you want to call it, some cash to one side, is vital. Particularly if you've gone through a good bull run and you've made some good money, make sure you've got something on the side that is protected, that's again not in something that might go pop or get locked away, actual cash in the bank account. Because at the moment, we've got people who made a massive gain last year, have got a massive tax bill to pay, and their crypto is currently somewhere between kind of 60 and 90% underwater. So, if a big bit of advice I would give to people, and it covers that kind of liquid loan situation, it covers market dips, is have some cash in the bank. And we've seen it with the likes of Celsius. We've seen that horrible Terra Luna death spiral where people put their life savings in that thing. Stable coins are a fantastic mechanism in the crypto space, but they're not as good as cold hard cash in your bank. And I think we USDT, USDC, the likes of those, they're pretty big, but who knows when these things are going to fall horribly.
Yeah. A question here: liquidated, wouldn't you act like your coins are being held forever and never sold unless you're 2G? Yeah. Anything to speak on that one?
So, I mean, this kind of comes back to the question of kind of how much do you disclose to the tax authorities? At the end of the day, if you get liquidated from a technical point of view, those are not your coins anymore. They are taken by the protocol and they're gone. They're not yours. You've disposed of them. And if you are reporting things correctly, you are going to be in a situation where that's going to trigger a tax bill. Probably, depending on circumstances, depending on pricing, depending on when you got in and when you got liquidated. But the likelihood is you are going to have a gain because you're going to put the money in there. You could have a situation where the actual loss is minimal. You could have a situation where you had 100,000, you sacrificed 100,000 with no expectations. You got your Pulse, but you attributed that 100,000 to the base cost of your Pulse. You then stuck that into liquid loans. You borrowed 50k against your 100k's worth of Pulse, and it then drops down, and you get liquidated without there being an initial pump. And in a situation where you are liquidated from that 50k, your original base cost was 100. You got liquidated at 50. You've got a loss. So in that situation, it's not a problem. It's only going to be a problem where you are, you're taking advantage of the growth in the value of the coin.
Gotcha. Very good. Tovos did some questions in, so we might have a couple more, but I want to ask you the last question I have for you, at least top of my head, is the software. I want to go to that. What software do you use that people can figure this out?
A lot of people use Coinly. I think Coinly is great for basic transactional stuff. It's pretty easy to manage. It is not great for me because for mass review, for mass adjustments, it doesn't work very well. So if you've got a relatively simple portfolio and you're kind of a bit of a Richard Heart maxi and you've not got too many transactions going on, Coinly is pretty straightforward. Personally, I use coin tracking So it's cointracking.info, which is a bit more technical, it's a bit more complicated, it's a bit more difficult to get used to, but it's a lot more powerful in terms of how you adjust things and play with things. They're based in Germany, so they're kind of Europe friendly, but I think they cover most countries in terms of tax regimes. They're pretty responsive, and not massively expensive overall. So I tend to use coin tracking, and it doesn't. At the moment, it doesn't adjust for the new UK rules on HEX staking. But what that means is basically you have to go in and manually edit whatever 10, 15 stakes worth of transactions, which isn't too painful. But my view is that that's the best bit of software from a tax professional's point of view to be able to give to your tax advisor for them to be able to fiddle around and make the numbers look pretty.
Nice, and that's what you've been using for a while now as well.
Yeah, that's what I use, and that's what I tend to try and get most of my clients on there. And I've got a corporate account with them, which means I can actually get them an account cheaper than if they went direct anyway.
Oh, very cool, very cool.
So,
well, I don't see any other questions coming in, and it's lunchtime for me. Anthony, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for coming into the jungle.
Hope it was useful. And not too dry, and I hope I haven't upset too many bears.
Oh, you definitely. It's been definitely an oscillation of it, but I'm very happy to have you on your time. You get paid for your time, and maybe I can pay you if maybe I don't know if the tax regulation in the UK around gifting someone a beer, a pint, But I definitely next time I'm over that side of the pond. I would like to have one with you. This has been
cool. And we won't. I promise we won't talk about tax at all.
Yeah, well, that might come up, but yes, for sure. And it's been a pleasure. Like I said, everyone, please be nice. This is like you have a professional on stream giving you advice that he normally charges for. If you have, I know he's giving advice for the UK, and that's fantastic for UK Hexicans, and that's what we're going for. Of course, we have a lot of American Hexicans. I'm sure we have some Hexicans from all over the world. If you want those people to come on the show, please message them, tell them about me, tag us on Twitter, follow Anthony, to tag him if you want, and maybe we can have like a tax panel of some sort, like a worldwide tax panel. I'll do it. That sounds cool. Anthony is at Fusion Tax, and it is fusiontaxpartners.com.
Fusionpartners.co.uk.
Sorry, fusionpartners.co.uk. If you're a Hexican in the UK and you're interested in tax services, please check out his company. Very knowledgeable gentleman, if I do say so myself. Of course, you can sit here and talk turkey with us for an hour and a half. You got to know a little bit, and has some steel. He doesn't back down, even in the face of comments that people, the vitriol from the tax doesn't back down. I love it. Family man, always appreciate that. It's been fantastic. Everyone, chat, you killed it as usual. I had to calm down a little bit, but no, you're awesome. A lot of people appreciated it. Yeah, this has been a great show. Taxation steps, I'll throw that up there. Well, amen. Amen to everyone and their fields. I appreciate it. Anthony, we're gonna let you go. You got the rest of your Friday night to enjoy. You're off for the rest of the night as far as the RHMax channel goes. Again, been a pleasure. Hope this is not the last time we chat. And again, maybe I'll buy you a pint in real life sometime, and we'll chat about crypto and not taxes if you prefer.
Great. Thanks, Max.
Yep. Have a good night.
Take care.